Why does the Lyceum Institute ask for donations? This is a question that we commonly get, and it is a fair question, so I believe it deserves a fair answer. There are two sides to the answer, though. The first side, the simpler side, the less interesting side, is the legal one. We are a public charity, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and this requires that we receive a certain amount of our annual funding from a certain number of people every year. There's a proportionality test that's involved in this, and it's, again, not very interesting, but it is important because there are many benefits that we receive, certain programs to which we have access, and grants, and certain other criteria that we don't have to meet so long as we operate as a public charity. But the deeper, the more interesting side to the answer is the philosophical one. And this can be summed up in a single sentence, namely, that we are not selling education. In other words, we are not exchanging a good, a product, or a service for money. I know that we have fees, and I'll get to that in a moment, but first, hear me out. The root of this issue, the core principal question that needs to be answered here is one of human dignity. There are certain things in life, certain things which are proper to the way that a human being ought to live, that are not, that cannot, or at the very least should not, be for sale. For examples, love, friendship, justice, and I would include education as well. And I believe that if you pay for these things, you might receive some tangible benefits, some obvious pleasures, but you're not really getting what you paid for. You might just be getting the illusion, the feeling that someone loves you, or the feeling that you are someone's friend, but you don't really have that relationship established. Not to be too crass, but for instance, if you go to a prostitute and you pay her money, especially if you pay her a lot of money, she will be more inclined to tell you all manner of things that are intended to make you feel good. But when you do this, can you trust that she really means the things that she says? Or similarly, if someone claims to be your friend, but seems more interested in the things that you have or the goods to which you have access, like your car or nice television, gaming systems, a nice backyard pool, country clubs, season tickets, whatever it may be, is that person someone that you would really consider a friend? And I probably don't even need to say that justice which is bought is no justice at all. Bribes and threats and any manner of coercion necessarily undermines the very essential nature of the law and of the offices of those to whom the law is entrusted. Well, similarly, an education which is bought tends to become focused on something other than educating, it becomes focused on entertaining or pleasing. And neither of these, though they might attend education, neither of these are what it means truly to educate. Just as someone who has to pay for friendship never learns himself how to become a good friend, and someone who bribes his way out of every penalty never learns to become just, so too someone who believes himself to be purchasing education never becomes educated. In fact, I would say that that person becomes uneducated in a way. Thinking, feeling, believing himself to be educated, believing that that is what he has purchased, but in truth having only bought an illusion about himself. In a certain way, I think the criminal who bribes his way out of jail time is more honest than the person who believes himself to have purchased an education. The criminal, that is at least unlikely to be deceiving himself about being just. Now, all that said, we have to recognize that the world, as it is, requires us to have money and to use money. Love, friendship, justice, and education, these all exist in a world of material needs. Married couples don't buy one another's love, but they need to support one another in their material existence. And friends will often share their possessions and help one another out financially when need strikes as part of being friends. It's not how they purchase their friendship, but it's something that is given freely because of the friendship. Likewise, in a somewhat related manner, police officers and judges and legislators receive salaries, and so too do educators. But these salaries are not, or shouldn't be, they're not given in exchange for making so many arrests or issuing so many tickets or for how many convictions one hands down or for how many laws one passes in a given you know year in Congress or even in a whole career. Nor should they be given, for that matter, for the number of students who graduate or who pass courses or anything of the sort. Now, it's sad to say that a lot of colleges and universities have, in fact, given way to this latter temptation. That at a certain point in time, they really started operating a lot more like businesses and therefore started to look towards satisfaction of the parents and the students who have come to view, with some justification, I think, the exorbitantly high costs as purchasing something. And unfortunately, usually that means purchasing the degree and purchasing a ticket to some higher earning potential or a more satisfying career, or whatever it may be. Well, we at the Lyceum believe that education isn't something that can be bought, and that rather education is a dignified good. We believe also in the integrity of our faculty as educators. So, myself and the other faculty, we are not members of the Lyceum in order to provide you some service in exchange for money. We're not giving out degrees or certificates of any kind, and certainly not as something which is purchased. Our intent, our sole intent, is to provide the dignified good of true learning. In this, we don't even view our faculty as employees. They're really simply colleagues in the pursuit of and proclamation of things believed to be true. And so the Lyceum has fees, yes, but these fees are maintenance fees. They allow us to pay for the technology that we need to use to provide our digital community and the resources for educating. We have also our tiered structure for memberships and for seminar enrollments, which allows us to provide some minimal stipend for the faculty so that they can afford to put in the hours to teach. But frankly, they don't get paid nearly enough with these stipends to justify the incomparable good that is the education they provide. In other words, we can only really give an honorarium, and that honorarium can never really be enough. But what we can afford to give right now simply isn't anywhere close to that. At the same time, keeping the entry cost as low as possible, keeping these fees to a minimum, allows us to make education accessible to many people. So we have these higher tiers so that people who enroll or purchase them can give back to us. That most of that actually constitutes a donation. But our entry fee, our lowest level of enrollment fee, really just allows us to keep the lights on in a very literal sense. On the other hand, receiving donations allows us, or will allow us, God willing, to provide a true education. An education that really does retain that proper dignity of not being a product or a service, but a good which is essentially and fundamentally worth more than money. That is, we require money to provide an education. This is a dedicated task that takes a lot out of the educators, asks a lot of the educators, And so, in order that they're able to sustain themselves, to provide for themselves, money is a necessity. But the good that they provide is not something that can ever properly be exchanged for money. And in fact, if you pay money to receive it, you're stripping away its very essence. Thank you for listening to this, and I hope that is a fair answer to this very good question.